Welcome to Flat, Cool, and Acid-Free, an OK State Archives podcast, bringing you stories about Oklahoma State University and Oklahoma. I'm Nina Thornton, multimedia producer for the OSU Libraries. On this episode, in 1977, 10 years after Edmon Low's retirement from OAMC, the library building that he helped create was named in his honor. You're about to hear the newly digitized full dedication ceremony, including Edmon Low's speech from 46 years ago.
It seems as though the room may be filled before everyone files in to be seated. It's good to see you here for a special occasion. We're really here for two reasons: to name a building and to honor a gentleman and a scholar. And fortunately, we can combine the two occasions into one ceremony. Actually, in reality, our institution is honored that this gentleman gave 27 years of his professional career to it. The portrait you see above the fireplace here was placed there by the Low family 3 years ago. And at this point, I'd like to break in to ask Mr. Low to please introduce his family. Many of them are here. Mr. Low, would you please do this?
I'll just introduce you somewhat as a group. I'd like to say that here I have my two sons and daughters. This is Donald and Mark and Francis. You all stand up here. And then the remainder of these are wives and grandchildren and nieces and nephews and I don't know what all, but we've got quite a group here today, and it's the first time that we've got all the family together since we left Stillwater 10 years ago. So it is a pleasure to have them here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Edmund. I knew I couldn't get by without that. And incidentally, daughter Frances comes from Canton, New York, as a great big surprise to Mr. and Mrs. Low. So they were pleased to see her today. Now I'm going to call upon Dean Randall Jones for our invocation. Dean.
O God our Father, you have given us the opportunity to gain knowledge and wisdom. So we pray that you will help us use our abilities to better serve you and our fellow man. We're grateful for this occasion when we can honor one who has dedicated his life in order that knowledge might be shared with so many people over the years. And we ask your blessings upon him, that he may continue to enjoy the fruits of his labors. Thou who dost enlighten the minds of men everywhere, we thank you that you have shed your light upon the minds of those who have gone through this university and this great library. And we're grateful that you have revealed to us the truth, and we pray that we might ever remember that the truth shall make us free. We pray in the name of Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Randall. I'd like at this time to express appreciation to the University Bellmaster, Professor Wayne Hallstrom, for the concert we heard from the tower. prior to this ceremony. I'd like to introduce two people who are important in the life of Edmon Low. One of these is University Architect Emeritus Phil Wilbur, who worked so closely with Mr. Low and Dr. Bennett in planning this building. Will Phil Wilbur please stand and be recognized? And also the gentleman who is responsible for this beautiful portrait, artist Glenn Nelson. Please stand. At this time, I'm going to call upon the OSU Interim President, Dr. James H. Boggs, to bring a message.
Thank you, Roscoe. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a double or triple pleasure for me to be here today. I have a reputation at home of being an individual who doesn't like to be very far away from a book. And I showed this not too long ago when I gained temporary custody of the president's office at OSU. When Dr. Comm left his office, he had the people pack all of the books and various displays that he had on his library shelves in the office. And when I sat at that desk and looked at the other end of the office, I noticed that I just couldn't bear it for 2.5 months and had to do something about it. So I asked Mr. Ricker, please call Roscoe and tell him to bring a library over here. So I'm pleased to report that Roscoe did perform in that way and has a fine library now in the president's office, and I get the advantage of it for a while. To attempt to indicate the great appreciation that this university has for Dr. Low and the great admiration that we all have for him is a very difficult thing. And inasmuch as I am a very practical person, it occurred to me that one of the ways we could think about the accomplishments of this man would be to talk about what this library might cost if we had to build it today. And I talked to our people in the architectural office to get an estimate of what the cost per square foot of a library like this one would be. And after having their estimate, I checked it out with an expert, Mr. Low, to find out that that was the correct number. And between the two of us, we've come up with an estimate of what we think is about the right number for the building. It turns out that the original building had 183,000 square feet, and later put an addition on of something over 50,000 square feet to produce almost 250,000 square feet of floor space in this building, or 5 to 6 acres of floor space. And that cost $4,100,000 to build. But our calculations indicate that on today's market, with the quality that we have in this building, that the cost per square foot would approximate $80. And if you multiply that out, it turns out that it would cost about $20 million to build this building today. Those of us who work in Oklahoma, knowing what bonded money has been available in the last 10 years for capital improvements, and looking at the future, realize that it's virtually impossible to have this kind of a library on a campus today in Oklahoma. And my guess is in the next 10 to 15 years, with other economic factors going in the direction we see them, that the existence of this kind of a library at universities will be more and more rare. If you have one, you're not going to get one. Dr. Rouse and I estimated that within the walls of this building are stored approximately another $20 million worth of books, journals, periodicals, and various documents which serve the OSU users. And so here we're standing in the midst of a $40 million investment in current dollars. And of course the existence of it has to be traced back to people with great vision like Dr. Bennett, who was willing to work out the budgetary commitments. And I might say, Edmon, that those of us who have worked in later years couldn't help but note that Dr. Bennett gets the credit for this library, but we had to pay for it every year up until a year ago. But it's now paid for, and we're very proud of that. But he worked out a unique formula to pledge some income that we had to this building, and it was the wisest decision, in my opinion, which has been made in behalf of Oklahoma State University. And of course, the part that Mr. Low had in planning this facility and in staffing it and in creating an attitude of service in the people who work here is incalculable. And so we at OSU are always glad to honor Edmon Low. He said that he left OSU in Stillwater 10 years ago. That's not right. Edmon Low has never left Stillwater. You hear this man talked about every day, and we all realize the great contribution that he made. So I'm more than pleased to be a part of this afternoon, to welcome you officially to the OSU campus, and to offer my good wishes and congratulations to Edmon Low.
Thank you, Dr. Boggs. I asked Louis Sanderson some time back if, when the building were paid for, we could have that money for library operations, and he said no, so it didn't work out that way. Now, we noticed that some of the conferees, the Oklahoma Library Association is meeting here this week, are coming in, and that's quite all right because they've been in meetings, and I hope they don't have to slip out early because meetings are going on campus. And I do want to make an announcement right now, if I may. The Union List of Serials Committee, of which I am chairman, will not meet at 4:30 because I don't think I can be there. So let's delay it at least 15 to 20 minutes if you're on that committee. And speaking of the Oklahoma Library Association, I thought it would be appropriate to have greetings brought from that organization from its president, Mrs. Alfreda Hanna, from Bethany Nazarene College Library. Alfreda.
It is indeed a privilege to bring greetings from the Oklahoma Library Association to you, Dr. Edmon Low, to the administration, to the faculty, and to the staff of the Oklahoma State University representing the association. It would seem very fitting to us from OLA that this library be named after you, Dr. Low, for you were so active and always have been on the hearts and minds of the people of OLA. During your term here at OSU, you were president of the OLA. You served, it seemed to me, in almost every capacity I could think of in OLA. When I was trying to find out what all he had done, I found that every issue nearly of the Oklahoma Librarian seemed to contain Edmon Low's name. So it would seem appropriate that the library be named after him. And certainly we would be gratified to have any important, significant library such as that of OSU, named after an OLA member and former officer. Edmon Low has been active in his profession in a far wider scope at the state level. Twice he served as vice president of the American Library Association. He served as president of the American Colleges and Universities Division of the American Libraries Association. He has been a counselor, and he has been active in many, many committees of the American Library Association. But Edmon Low's service has gone beyond that of his profession, to the point that he has been recognized by the Library Binding Institute. He has been recognized by the American Library Association as recently as during the centennial year as an honorary life member, and few of these are given, as well as having been recognized with the Distinguished Service Award of the OLA. When I first came into library service here in Oklahoma, I heard Edmon Low's name. He left about the time that I came to the state. And I always wanted to know why it was people held him in such high regard. And then one time I asked somebody, why is it at that time I was working in a research library, why is it we get such good service from OSU. They're always courteous, so prompt, and so pleasant when I have to telephone for something in a rush. And I was given the answer. Their director believed in service at all times to the public. And if somebody wasn't available on his staff to do it, he was willing to start immediately and take up the means himself whereby to serve his public. And that stuck with me. And it has interested me that in the years since you've left OSU, your philosophy has stayed here. And I think it's so apropos that a librarian whose great emphasis in life has been service to others, his profession, and particularly service to his public, should have a library named after him that has retained that essence of his philosophy in library service. Let's put service to our public first. It's a pleasure. Edmon Low.
Thank you, Elfrida. At this point in the program, we were to have reflections from the chairman of the Board of Regents of Oklahoma State University, Mr. Edwin Ketchum. At 2:30, I received an urgent message out of a meeting that he cannot be with us. And of course, we're very sorry about this. So it appears that the reflections of Edwin Ketchum suddenly become the reflections of Roscoe Rouse without much rehearsal. But it's a matter of casting back, looking in the past and at the present to speak about Edmon Low. I think anyone is privileged who has the opportunity to introduce him, whatever the occasion might be. And personally, I can't speak too highly in this regard because the man has been such a great influence upon my professional career. From my undergraduate days in library school to my first library job at what was then Northeastern State College, to graduate library work at the University of Michigan, where he was my professor. Edmon Low was my mentor. Some of you have heard this story before, but I'm so proud of it that it bears repeating, I think, anyway. He's largely responsible for my being here in his former position. And you know it isn't often that a retiring person has the opportunity to virtually select his successor. In 1966, the National Library Conference of the American Library Association met in New York City. I was employed as director of libraries at the State University of New York at Stony Brook. And all my Oklahoma friends at the conference were telling me, Edmon Low wants to see you, Edmon Low wants to see you. So when I did see him, he took me to his hotel room in the New York Hilton and spent 3 hours telling me why I should follow him at OSU. And of course I was indeed flattered, and it did work out that way. So I'm very pleased that he found me at that conference in New York. Now, in making up this printed program, opposite the program itself on the inside of the front cover, I did want a sage, succinct quotation from Edmon Low, just one, on that opposite page, but I couldn't find one that seemed suitable. Ed, you just aren't very quotable. You know, every time he sits down to write, he's so practical and straightforward, and he gets right to the job, and there just isn't any room for flowery, philosophical phrases. He's a practical man. Well, you've heard how he has been honored many times before. He has had the Distinguished Alumnus Awards from both East Central Oklahoma State University and the University of Michigan. He has taught each summer for many years at the University of Michigan, and then 5 years as a full professor after he retired from OSU. And as you know, he is now director of the library at New College of the University of South Florida. He will be there through next year, we know. He received the ALA Lippincott Award, the Oklahoma Library Association Distinguished Service Award, the Library Binding Institute Silver Book Award. He was president of the Association of College and Research Libraries. At the University of Michigan, I learned that a group of his students have created the Edmon Low Student Award, which now exists. Edmon has worked in library legislation on the state and national level for many, many years. So much has been accomplished through his expertise. he's been most influential, and he is quite a master at this kind of effort. And recently his time has been turned to the new copyright law, which is so important to us in higher education especially. This building and its mode of operation are a reflection of the character of Edmon Low himself. It is big as he is big in perspective. It is open. He is open in his human relationships. It is serving as he has served and is serving his responsibilities to humankind. And today we honor a deserving but humble servant of the library profession and of higher education in general. I bring you Mr. Library, Dr. Edmon Low.
Thank you so much for the gracious words of introduction. It is a pleasure indeed to be here. Before I talk further, I should like to introduce one individual who is here today and one of the very prominent members of our library profession, Mr. Alphonse Tressa, who is the Director of the National Commission on Libraries and Information Science in Washington, and one of the most influential members of the library profession today. Al, would you stand up there and be greeted? It was 10 years ago, almost to a day, that the Oklahoma Library Association meeting here in Stillwater in the spring of 1967 devoted a portion of their program and time to honoring me as I was retiring as librarian of the university here. It was a great day for me at that time, and now, after a decade of wandering in the wilderness, I come back again to another meeting of that association and another even greater day. All this is beyond my wildest dreams, and life and friends certainly have dealt wonderfully kindly with me over those passing years, and I'm truly grateful to all. While I'm very thankful for the honor thus accorded me, I am very aware, as I know you all are, that a building such as this is the work of many hands, without whose efforts it would not have been possible. President Henry Bennett, whom you spoke about a while ago, whose dedication to scholarship and recognition of the library as the heart of the university prompted him to make the necessary investment for such a facility when so many other needs were making their pressing demands, and that was very true. He got all the money together that he could and built this building. And I remember so well when he said, well, it seems like we can get together about $3 million, and would that be enough? And I said, well, if that's all we have, it'll have to be enough, but if we could get another $1 million, it sure would help. And so he said, well, let me think about it. And he says, I scratched around for a while, and I came up with another $1 million. And he says, that's all. That's just all there is. And I knew that was true. So what happened here was a wonderful building where all the resources was placed in it when many other needs were very pressing. And I've been eternally grateful not only to President Bennett, but to the faculty and everyone who made the building possible and made the necessary withal to and also to wait for a while till other resources became available for further buildings. In addition to those, there was John Mock, whom many of you remember now, and Attorney General Williamson, who devised the scheme and solved the difficult problem of financing, partly with a bond issue, the construction of a non-income producing facility. And now that's not easy. The things that had been heretofore and most hereafter had been income producing, like the student union and dormitories. They got here a non-income producing facility. I still don't know how they did it. I think it was illegal and probably immoral, but nevertheless they did it. And then Mr. Welber, whom you've already spoken about here, but who deserves so much praise for his work in design of the building, along with Mr. Dwight Stevens and other members of Mr. Welber's staff. We're eternally grateful to them for this building, and I trust that they're as proud of it as I am. And also the architecture firm of Sorey, Hill and Sorey, who designed the building and labored long and diligently to produce a harmonious design with other campus buildings on here, which was also a difficult thing to do, where the fenestration, the windows, we wanted low ceiling heights, and that didn't fit in with other windows, so we went to these long spandrels here and created what I think was a very harmonious design. It was a very difficult problem to produce the design that was needed, but also incorporated the new and experimental arrangements not heretofore attempted in any library buildings. You see, at that time, we didn't have the freestanding stacks and the modular construction that became so usual later, and the flexibility where with the floor loading and the ceiling heights and ceiling lighting, any space could be used for anything that made it such a flexible design. And finally, President Oliver Wilhelm, who saw the building through to completion after the death of President Bennett. These and many others made vital contributions which resulted in a building whose principles of modular construction, open stacks, and flexibility and use of space are still, a quarter of a century later, being followed in construction in academic library buildings. And the latest building at University of South Florida at Tampa, which they just finished this last year, is along this same design, as well as most other major library buildings in the country. And to the many involved in making this naming of the building come to pass, the Academic Council, the Naming Committee of the Board of Regents, and to Presidents Calm and Jim Boggs, and to Mr. Ketchum and the Board of Regents, my family and I are most grateful and doubly pleased that it has come during our lifetimes while we can know about it. In conclusion, I should like to quote from the passage in the May 1977 Reader's Digest by Forrest Carter, the Cherokee Indian and author who wrote the novels Gone with Texas and The Education of Little Tree, who says, "Libraries are the most wonderful places in the whole world. I think the greatest honor would be for a man to have a library named after him." Now, that was just here in the May issue that they wrote about this. That was quite apropos, I think. I think this is true. It certainly is an honor to have a library named after him. And I accept this greatest honor really as a representative of all those dedicated and sincere people who were determined that devotion to learning and scholarship, as exemplified by this wonderful building, would be enshrined forever in the hearts of the teachers and students at Oklahoma State University. And I thank you all who have come here to share this day with me and express your belief in the mission of Oklahoma State University. May its future be always as bright as the present is for us today. Thank you so much.
Mr. Low, we indeed are the honored ones. He has promised me that he will plan for the future to attend all future OLA conferences, so those of you who are librarians will be glad to know we'll see him every year anyway. At this time, I want to have presented to Mr. Low a small, unusual award. Is Dr. John Walker from East Central Oklahoma State University in the audience. Will you please come forward and make this award and explain it to Mr. Low?
Thank you, Roscoe. As you heard from Roscoe earlier, Ed Low is a graduate of East Central. We take some pride in having launched Ed on his library career at East Central. It appears, however, that in launching him, we didn't get everything into his baggage. He left something behind, and I'm here today with Roscoe's help to redress that wrong, Ed. When you left, you appear to have taken something from your office wall that you didn't pack away, and those who sent you away didn't take care to check. And I want to show this to you and represent it to you on behalf of East Central and of our part of the state. May I read it to the audience? It says, Tishomingo High School. This certifies that Edmon H. Low has satisfactorily completed the course of study prescribed by the Board of Education for the high school department and is therefore entitled to this diploma. This is Ed's high school diploma, and it's dated 1920.
"57 years ago." Can't believe it. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are so pleased that you came to be with us on this occasion in which we are honored by having the library named the Edmon Low Library. We'd be pleased for you to visit, to talk with the Lows. Oh, one word here about a plaque. John Thomas, member of the committee planning this occasion, is working on a bronze, brass, gold, some kind of plaque, which will be placed on the building. The site has not been determined, but the wording is in process, and we are going to work with the Board of Regents in having a plaque on the building with the name Edmon Low Library on it. Now will you please remain, visit, and have some refreshments in the back of the room. Thank you very much for coming.
Edmon Low served as head librarian from 1940 to 1967 and remains the longest-serving head of the OSU Libraries to date. Help us celebrate 70 years in the Edmon Low Library by visiting friends.library.okstate.edu. Theme music is It's a Process, composed by Ben Stone and Finley Green, and published by BBC Production Music, PRS. From the folks at Oklahoma State University Libraries and the Archives, thanks for listening. And always remember to keep your archival material flat, cool, and acid-free.